this is Tipping Point Radio. I'm Craig Merriweather, and you're listening to The Mastermind Show. One thing that psychology teaches us is that we all have a large measure of self-hatred in our unconscious minds. Carl Jung refers to this as our shadow. The shadow being everything about ourselves that we are ashamed of or feel guilty about, that we have pushed down deep, out of our awareness. That way we never have to look at it again, much less deal with it. But of course we have to deal with it because it's going to manifest in some way or another, whether it's hatred for our bodies or bad relationships or however it manifests in life. Well, back on the Mastermind Show is Colin Tipping, creator of Radical Forgiveness, and we're going to go deep into specific topics that radical forgiveness can help heal, like your relationship with your body or also to other people. Colin is one of the most popular teachers of our time and is creator of what is now recognized as the most powerful leading-edge technology for personal and spiritual growth today, radical forgiveness. In addition to working with individuals, families, and groups, he has also taken a specialized form of the radical forgiveness technology into corporations and other organizations as a way of resolving and preventing conflict, raising morale, and increasing productivity. The main characteristic of his work is a practical spirituality that is simple, honest, straightforward, and unpretentious. He has a knack for making spiritual issues simple and practical. Colin is the best-selling author of the books Radical Forgiveness, Radical Self-Forgiveness, Expanding into Love, and 25 Practical Uses for Radical Forgiveness. Now here's my interview with Colin Tipping. Hi Colin, welcome to the show.
Well, it's good to be with you, Craig.
A lot of people know your work from book Radical Forgiveness, and your new book is 25 Practical Uses for Radical Forgiveness. So there's a lot in this book to cover, and I want to go over one specific point in the book that I think a lot of people have issues with, and that is lose weight and love your body. But before we get to that, it's so important that people understand what you mean by forgiveness, because that is a hot point for a lot of people, and especially self-forgiveness. So I was wondering if you could explain what you mean by those terms, and especially radical forgiveness.
Right. Well, the quickest and easiest way for me to explain it, I think, and explain the difference between the two, is to say that that radical forgiveness takes us through 5 steps. Traditional forgiveness only goes to the first 3. So let me explain what those are real quickly, and I think that was probably be the quickest way to explain it, because there's quite a big difference between the two. The paradigms really are very different. But anyway, so the first 3 steps are to tell the story. You know, what actually happened. And then the second step is, what are my feelings about that? Why am I so upset about it? And am I willing to feel those feelings? So feeling the feelings is a very important step, which a lot of people try to leave out. You know, they try to avoid feeling the pain of being hurt or being damaged, being abused, whatever it is. They find some way, especially in this country and most of the Western world, we don't do that part very well. We try to find a way to avoid feeling our feelings. But for me, especially in radical forgiveness, I think it's essential that we allow ourselves, give ourselves permission to be in our feelings for as long as it takes until we can get to the third step, which is to find a way to be more reflective about what happened, and to then look at it from as if from half a mile above the situation, what actually happened there. And why did that person do what they did to me to make me feel so victimized? And what expectations did I have that were not met, perhaps? Or what interpretations did I make as a consequence of what happened that really are not true, that has increased my suffering? And if I let those interpretations, those beliefs, and those assumptions go till all that's left is what actually happened, will I feel better? Will I be able then to go to a place of saying, well, I can't really forgive the person because they still did something bad to me, but at least I can let go of the pain and suffering that I've had associated with this story for many years, perhaps, or even days, whatever it is. So we then are looking at the possibility of walking in that person's shoes for a little while and saying, if I had been in that position, would I have done that? If I'd had his background, his experience, or her experience, would I have done something like that to somebody else? So we're looking for a way of of ameliorating the situation and trying to understand why the person did it, so that we can come to a stage of relative peace. So that's as far as it can go. But we still are holding on to the idea that something wrong happened, and that I'm a victim and that person is a perpetrator, but we're doing our best to let it go. That's traditional forgiveness. And nobody really tells us how to get beyond that. And those that do end up on Oprah. I mean, that's how rare it is for somebody to actually achieve forgiveness at this level. So now we go to step 4 in radical forgiveness, and this is really the major step. It's the big step, and it doesn't require any belief, but it just requires that somebody be open to the possibility that there was a reason for this happening, and that there are no accidents, and that our lives are full of incidences that we are actually bringing forth for ourselves for our spiritual growth at the soul level. We don't know we're doing it consciously, but unconsciously we are creating situations that will give us opportunity to feel our feelings and to feel the pain of separation in some way or another. And the purpose for that is that it relates to the reason we're actually here on this planet, and that is to really understand and get at the feeling level what oneness truly is. And the only way to do that is to experience separation, which is the opposite. And so our purpose for being on this planet then is to have these kind of experiences, and nobody seems to escape them, and that's a clue right there. Everybody seems to have them one way or another. So, instances of separation and experience of the pain of separation, whether it be through betrayal or abuse or whatever. We're finding ways to create separation both within ourselves, which we need to forgive ourselves for, and through the actions of other people, so we get an opportunity to forgive them. So the forgiveness for us, now, radical forgiveness is a matter of coming to a place of realizing that there is no separation between each of us. We are all one. And if I harm you, I harm myself. And so eventually what we're all going to come to one day, I hope, when we really get that that's the purpose of being here, that we drop our need to have separation and we just go to oneness between all of us. So that's the 4th step, and then the 5th step, when we're doing this as a process, is to integrate it into the physical body, because our pain is in our bodies, is in every structure, in every cell of our bodies. So we do something physical to release the energy tied up in the story. So that's briefly the concept of radical forgiveness. Everything happens for a reason. Things happen to us, but not so much to us, but for us. It's for our spiritual growth that we have these experiences, and that we are in fact complicit in creating them through our soul contracts with other people.
But what if I'm mad at myself? I'm angry at myself. I have these thoughts going through my head. I'm worthless. I'm not lovable. I'm no good. Why should I even be here? How does this process work for, if I'm just angry at myself?
It's basically the same process, but you have to come at it from a different angle. You have to see the perfection of it in just the same way as if you're forgiving something that happened to you by somebody else. But the problem there is that we are asking ourselves for forgiveness for what we've done to ourselves. So, who are we asking forgiveness? Who are we appealing to for self-forgiveness? And that's where we meet up with a problem, because our subconscious mind is composed of all sorts of characters who will want to say no to us, like the inner judge, the critical parent within there, the saboteur. You see, we're not one self, we're a whole series of selves. We're a whole community of selves in there that compose our ego. And so when we're asking our our ego self for forgiveness, we're always going to get no, and that's why it's so difficult. So the trick here is to go straight to our spiritual self and ask our spiritual self, or our higher self, or our spiritual intelligence, whatever you want to call it. We ask that part of ourselves for forgiveness, and the answer is always yes, because that part of ourselves knows the truth and knows the perfection of it. But the trick with radical forgiveness and with radical self-forgiveness is that the only way we can do that is to use the tools that we've created for that purpose. If we try to do it in the head, it does not work.
Oh, yeah, very much. And this is why I love talking with you, because the tagline for Tipping Point Radio and specifically the Mastermind Show is conversations with leading experts in mind, body, and spiritual transformation. And every now and then I get somebody who combines all three, and that seems to be what your work is all about. It is. It's all one.
There's three forms of intelligence. There's mental intelligence, which is the mind. There's emotional intelligence, which is the heart. And then spiritual intelligence, which is the higher self. Yeah. And we have to use all three.
Well, this kind of leads into the subject I want to talk about more in depth. And maybe stop me if I'm getting this wrong, but your first books about radical forgiveness, which titled Radical Forgiveness, and then Radical Self-Forgiveness, goes really in depth into that process. And this new one that is just coming out, 25 Practical Uses for Radical Forgiveness, takes specific situations and issues in our lives and kind of breaks it down in that way. And one that really kind of struck me, and I thought maybe this would be one to go in depth in this interview, because I'm sure you could probably take an hour for each one of those 25. But lose weight and love your body. This seems to be an issue for a lot of people. And what I found interesting, because you mentioned in the book talking about self-hatred and Carl Jung's definition of the shadow self. And I wanted to read a quick little thing in your book talking about the body. You say, we make our bodies scapegoats. We pour hatred into our bodies and treat them badly. In this, we are aided by the way society in general and the advertising industry in particular promotes the idea that there is such a thing as the ideal body to which we should all aspire. And I think that hit it for me. It's like, yeah, absolutely. I myself do that. I don't love my body. I of the things that go wrong with it, a little bit overweight and aches and pains and some back issues, and it's like I focus on those things. Boy, my body sucks. When in reality, probably 98% of my body works perfectly well. Yet I have all these things I throw at myself, and it's a lot of this hatred that I think you were just talking about in that sentence you wrote.
Yeah. Well, let me go back to my setup there about what radical forgiveness is. That we've come here in order to feel the difference between being a spiritual being in a state of total oneness with everything and everything else, to experiencing ourselves as separate. So, if that's the purpose of why we're here, and I believe, Craig, that we spend about half our life in that space of choosing to experience separation, but we do it with complete amnesia about what we're doing about this situation. In other words, we've forgotten the truth of why we're here, and so when we experience the pain of separation, we make it real and forget that that's what we came to experience. So then we feel victimized by it. Okay, so part of our experience of needing to feel separate was to have a body, because the body makes us feel separate right away. I'm different to you because I've got a different body. I'm not one with you. I don't know what it's like to be in your body. You don't know what it's like to be in mine. So even taking a body makes us feel separate. Okay, but it's still part of the illusion, but we don't know that. So. So then we make our bodies also the vehicle for experiencing separation. We start to criticize our body. It lets us down. We project all our anger onto our body, and so we become very disenchanted with our body because it makes us feel all the more separate. Now, in my model of spiritual evolution, we spend about half our lives, if you like, going through this experience of separation. But there comes a point in our life when we begin to wake up and begin to see through what's really going on, and waking up to the fact that we're not separate, but we are, in fact, all one, and that we're one with the universe and everything else. So that we then that's the point in our life where we begin to change, to shift, and where it was part of the purpose of us being here to project all our self-hatred onto our body, it now offers us the opportunity to say, no, this is not how it should be. We can now stop doing that, and we can start loving our bodies, because that's all part of what we came here to do and to be. And part of our healing is to love our bodies, and to love the body the way it is, and to start treating it not as an enemy, but as our loving friend, so to speak. Okay. So it's important for us to realize, I think, in our lives, that there are these two parts to what we're here to do. There is the first part, which is to experience separation, and then the second part, which I call expanding into love, which is the subject of my last book, where we begin to love our bodies and love everything else in our lives that we have hitherto seen as problematic or not good enough or whatever. And so our bodies become an object of something on which to practice love. If we can love our bodies and love ourselves, then we can love everything else in our experience. So that's the background to that chapter, or it's the background to all of the chapters, actually, because when I say 25 practical uses for radical forgiveness, this is a way of thinking that we can apply to every aspect of our life. And I just come up with a random 25, but there's plenty of others that we can apply it to too, because people have, generally speaking, considered forgiveness, and especially radical forgiveness, to be applicable to one or two big things that have happened to them in their lives, and that's all they need to apply it to. But the truth is, we need to apply it to all aspects of our life if we're really going to make it work for us as a evolutionary step in humankind's evolutionary spiritual development. I really do think this is something that can change the world if we can shift our thinking from victim consciousness to expanding into love. And that's really what I'm all about now. And it's a much bigger concept than just forgiveness. But we can start with our bodies. We can stop projecting all our self-hatred onto our bodies and making ourselves sick. That's a good place to start, And
well, it goes back to that. If you can't love yourself, let alone your body, how are you going to love others? Especially if you're consciously aware of wanting to have a better world. If you can't love what's perceived as you, and that includes your body, how do you expect love to then somehow transform into the world and create a better world?
Exactly. So your body is a symbol of separation, the way we think of it normally. And so if we can think of it in much bigger terms as being is simply the vehicle that we're using at this time in our spiritual evolution to experience what we need to experience in order to fully expand into love. And that mass translation may happen quicker than we think, but the body is just one of the things that we can focus our attention on to feel the oneness. If we can feel one with our body, that's at least a good start, right?
Right.
Instead of projecting all our hatred on it. See, when we first started with doing this work with people who had cancer, and what I found was that with cancer people, what they were doing was projecting hatred into their body. Making war on the cancer. Think about the language we use in dealing with cancer. I've got to beat this thing. I've got to make war on this thing. It's invading my body. It's something I've got to hate. I want to get beyond it. I want to beat it. I want to, that's the kind of language we use when we're talking about cancer. And so in our cancer retreats in the North Georgia mountains that we did way back in the 90s, our goal was to have people love their cancer. Love it. Because that's there, and it's there to teach us something. And so every illness that we have is there to teach us something and should be welcomed, should be loved, and said yes to instead of no to. Huh. And then, because the more we resist anything, the more it persists. And it's the same with our bodies. The more we send hatred and make war on those parts of our bodies that are having problems, the more the worse it's going to get, because we're using the wrong vibration. We're using a fear vibration to try to heal something. That doesn't make any sense. So we need to use the love vibration to heal, and that's why Reiki and things like that work.
Well, you actually have some online programs on your website, which is colintipping.com, and one of them is actually a weight loss program, and where you write a little bit about it, and it says the only things you have to give up with this program are the stories that caused you to gain the weight in the first place. And and that where this work really comes in. You have to, you have your story, and maybe there's even some truth to the story. I think there was a Scientific American a few months ago had an article that the memories that we have in our head are 50% lies, and so you have these stories about yourself and other people and the world around you, and if you could drop those stories, which quite possibly may be lies, you can start the healing process. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, how that came about, that weight loss program, was that when we started doing what we now call the Miracles Workshop, which is really when people come with pretty heavy-duty problems, and we, in a space of a weekend, have that story resolved, or more accurately, dissolved. What we noticed was, or what the people noticed and indicated back to us through their emails, was that they were spontaneously losing weight, or dropping off excess weight, put it that way, usually around the hips and the middle area, which is equivalent to the second chakra, which is the guilt chakra. It's the chakra associated with things like sex and money, and ethics in relationships, those kind of things. So people that had affairs and holding guilt were packing on the weight around their body as a protection, as a way of indicating that they hadn't forgiven themselves for the things that they have done, or thought that they have done, or made themselves guilty about, or someone else had made them feel guilty. But the main one that cropped up the most was sexual abuse. That the packing on the weight around the middle, hips and lower abdomen, was an indication that they were protecting themselves from perceived attack, sexual attack. And when we looked at it, it was that people had been abused when they were children, and had no idea how to handle that sort of pain. So the only defense they had was to repress it. So it remained not only in the mind, but in the body. And so what better way to feel protected against sexual attack than to make themselves unattractive and to put on a whole lot of weight around that area of their body, so that they didn't have to feel the pain of the abuse. But once they had dealt with the abuse, like they did in the workshop, once they'd forgiven the situation and realized that it was all part of their own spiritual journey, they were able to not only let go of the fear about being attacked sexually, but they dropped the weight that was there to defend it, because there was nothing to defend anymore. So that was the big revelation there. And so out of that experience, we developed this weight loss program, which principally means letting go of the story that
was holding the weight. See, the weight was not wrong. The weight, or the excess fat, if we can call it that, had a purpose, and that's why we need to love it. You know, it was there to protect. It wasn't there to make you feel bad. It was there to protect you against a perceived attack. And so once you love it and said, thank you for doing that, I appreciate why you were there, but now I'm over that problem. I don't have a fear of attack anymore. And so you don't have to be there anymore. And so that's the basis of the program. And then there, the various meditations and exercises that we suggest you do to help you release the story and release the energy in your body. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's how that program came about. And that's the way we approach all of this stuff, traumas and chronic fatigue syndrome and all these other things, this perfectionism. There's always a reason why it's there. And so once we have got to the point of awakening where we don't need to keep on reproducing these things in order to create more and more separation, that's when we go back and start clearing it all out using radical forgiveness. It's like cleaning out your closets and or doing a spiritual detox, if you like. That's what it's all about. And I would hazard a guess and say that the kind of people who listen to your radio program are people that are already at that point of having awakened. Otherwise, they wouldn't be listening to your program.
Right.
And they wouldn't be picking up a book called Radical Forgiveness. It wouldn't speak to them. But those of us who are at least half awake are going to start saying, well, what is this program all about? Or what's that book? Something's telling me to write that book. I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, you know what, your book actually fell off the darn shelf right in front of me.
That's wild. Yeah.
Because people were all of a sudden ready for the message. Or the other thing that often people tell me, that they were given the book and they didn't read it for 3 years. So it'd been on their bedside for 3 years, never touched it. And then all of a sudden one night they were led to read it. So that's the awakening that I'm talking about, where we suddenly begin to realize that there's purpose in everything. Nothing wrong has ever happened. There's been no mistakes made. I have made no mistakes in my life whatsoever. It's all been in tune with my divine plan. And from this point on, I can start going back and releasing the energy in my body that's been there as a result of me believing that I've been a bad person, or something happened to me that shouldn't have happened, or that I made bad mistakes. We can go back and start clearing all that junk out. And from then on, it becomes a case of what can I do that's going to make a difference to the world? And what can I do that will bring this consciousness to a level where we have no longer any need to create instances of separation? And that's what I'm looking forward to. And I think it's not very far away and is likely to happen in my lifetime, and I'm getting towards the end of it.
Yeah.
I'm 72 years of age, and I still believe, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen before
it's a great goal to go for, and you're certainly, with your work, moving people towards that consciousness, because this really is radical, that we need to forgive, because again, like I said at the beginning, this is a sticking point for a lot of people, especially when you've had these very, very traumatic episodes in your life. Of course, you're going to start, beating yourself up and putting on the weight if you feel you're unworthy because you've had some horrendous traumas, especially when you were a child and you don't know how to handle that, or nobody sat you down to explain it to you. And that's why this work is so important. And in reality, it is some work to do this stuff.
Oh, it is. I mean, this is not easy. It's not an easy concept to handle. It's not an easy concept to work into your daily life. But that's why, like I said at the beginning, you cannot do it without these simple tools that we've created, and that's why we put them up on the website for free, that people can download free worksheets. That I call that these worksheets are what I call secular prayer. It's a way of bypassing your mind, because your mind is always going to say, this is a load of rubbish. This is crazy. But your spiritual self knows the truth. So doing the worksheets is a way, and I didn't know this when I first started creating these worksheets. I had no idea. But it's a way of connecting with your spiritual self. And that part of you knows the truth. And that part of you knows why you're here. It knows what you're supposed to be doing. It knows your purpose. You don't. And it's going to guide you where you need to be and where you need to go and what you need to do. And so these worksheets are a way of connecting to that part of yourself and allowing yourself to connect with the idea that nothing wrong has ever happened. It's all been towards a purpose. No matter how hard your life has been, no matter, it's all part of your own specific divine plan. That's not to say it's fate. I don't believe in fate, because we have free will to make decisions. And you can turn around and say this is bullshit if you want to, and go back to being a victim. That's your choice. But that's perfect too, because you're not ready. So so the underlying premise is that everything, and there are no exceptions, that everything that has ever happened to us is meant to have happened. There's no mistakes, and they're all perfect. And but they weren't predestined in the sense that they had to happen that way. You chose to do it that way, but whatever route you chose was the right one. There was I think it was Yogi Bear who said that if you come to a fork in the road, take it.
Yeah.
And that's really the essence of it. Whatever decision you made when you came to a fork in the road turned out to be perfect, just the way it was, because that's the way it works.
Yeah. Well,
and the amount of the freedom that we get from living in this type of consciousness is incredible. And if only the world could get it, that it's all to a good purpose, and there's no need for us to keep doing it over and over again, like these wars that we're getting out there with Russia and Syria and all that. We can stop doing that if only we get it, that everything that's come before was leading to us to the point where we make a decision to say, okay, got it, understand it, no need to do that anymore.
Yeah, it's sort of like Edison and the 10,000 steps to make a light bulb. It's just we're working towards this way of thinking and being, and we need to go through some issues and mistakes and wrong turns before we get there. Before we go on, I want to talk a little bit more about the new book, the 25 Practical Uses for Radical Forgiveness. But you mentioned your website. So colintipping.com, it's COLINTIPPING.com. This is not a 30-second website. When you go there, take some time to look around, because there's a ton of stuff on here. Instead of TV one night, just go and look around. Even he mentioned the worksheets and things for free. Go to free stuff, and there's some stuff you can sign up for and download. But there's trainings and events that he's doing, and events all over the world, not just the United States, but all over Europe. And the online programs is really fascinating. There's got to be, let me go over here and look. There's got to be about 10 or 12 of them, 10 of them, and some videos and things, and all sorts of different stuff. This really is a master course in changing your life. So colintipping.com, just take some time and look, and you can find out more about his other books. We're specifically talking about one that just came out recently, 25 Practical Uses for Radical Forgiveness, which is, I don't want to call it a sequel, but an add-on to his other books about radical forgiveness. But he breaks it down into specific points, 25 specific points. And one of them that, we've been getting a little heavy in this conversation, but I wanted to ask you about one, and I'm just going to read out the title of this one, and you can explain it. It says, this is under Applications for Better Health, and it says, detox your body, reduce stress, live longer, and enjoy better sex. Now, I understand, you detox your body, you reduce your stress, yeah, you're going to live longer. I think that's scientifically proven. The one that captures my eye and says maybe I should get this book is Enjoy Better Sex.
Yeah, there's always a bit of a hook, isn't it?
Yeah.
well, the thing is, you see, once you realize what relationships are all about and how this kind of energy that we're talking about here, when you raise your vibration, and that's what radical forgiveness does for you. It moves you out of victim consciousness, which is a low vibration consciousness, and it's that leads to fights and wars and everything else. So the point about radical forgiveness is that it raises your vibration to a wholly different level. And so not only is that going to improve your relationships and improve your health, but it's going to improve all aspects of your life. And if we're talking about creating a higher vibration in your body, it's almost bound to lead to a better sex life because your vibration is higher, and you can relate to your partner in a wholly different way. So instead of, for instance, let's say that a low vibration relationship is one that is characterized by demand, by domination, by control, all of those things, expectations, unrealistic expectations, and so on, and one person being in control of the other. That's a low vibration relationship, and you don't have good sex in that kind of thing. Whereas when you wake up, when you're in the awakening phase, what happens then is that instead of basing your relationship on those low vibration qualities, you now shift in towards respecting each other, doing things for each other, respecting each other's boundaries, understanding each other more. So it becomes what I call, what Martin Buber called an I-thou relationship instead of I-it, whereas in an I-it relationship you are owning the other person, or you're thinking of the other person as a part of you, or part of your property, so to speak. When you're relating it as an it, you now relate to your partner as in an I-thou relationship. It's me, you. And so it's much more loving, much more caring, and almost automatically your sexual thing is going to get better. But on top of that, we look at the whole sexual personality thing and realize that there is a big difference between, some people have a very different sexual personality to the other. And our workshop, based on this whole idea, in the Expanding in Love workshop, we delve into the difference between two types of sexual personality. I haven't got time to go into it now, but one type is operating out of a fear of rejection, and the other type is operating out of fear of intimacy. And the way it works is that both of those attract each other, and it causes an awful lot of trouble until you get to understand why, what the other person's sexual personality is. So, as an extension of that particular chapter in the book about better sex, this is dealt with more comprehensively in the workshop called Expanding into Love. So, but yeah, it improves all areas of your life if you start to learn how to apply it and apply the philosophy of it.
Well, let me ask you one last question, and hopefully this isn't too big a question. I hope it's not, because there's so much in this book. I mean, just the applications for better relationships alone, I believe, looks like it's taken up about 100 pages in your book. We could spend a whole week just talking about that. But there's one in that section that's intriguing to me, and it says, find love for the other guy even if he's a jerk. And I don't want to specifically talk romantic relationship, but what about that idiot in the office, your coworker? And he is an idiot.
Yeah.
And he just pushes your buttons, and he's obnoxious. And how do you find forgiveness and love? I mean, this, he just gets under your skin, and you can feel your blood pressure rising. How do you move into a more healing space, a loving space, when this guy's there every day annoying you?
Well, the first thing to understand is that, whoever is out there who is pushing your buttons is resonating in you something that you have denied and repressed about yourself. So that's the first truth that is not very, people don't usually welcome that one.
No, that one hurts.
What do you mean?
Because basically they're showing a mirror. You hate this obnoxiousness in this person, so maybe they're showing you a part of you don't like. I mean, it's sort of like resonating with the music you like. Who knows why you like that band, but there's something about it that resonates with you, so this idiot is resonating something with you. That's really hard to take.
It is, and yet the thing about radical forgiveness is that you don't have to be analytical about it. All you have to do is to say, if that person is upsetting me, or whatever it is about that person that's upsetting me, is a part of me that I haven't yet worked on and forgiven. Okay, and so that's all you have to say. As long as you then pick up the worksheet, and the item on that worksheet that's pertinent to this is, I think it's number 10 on the worksheet. It says, 10 and 11 you need to do. 10 and 11 says, okay, I only get upset when someone resonates in me, some part of me that I've denied, repressed, and projected onto him. And the number 11 says, I now recognize that I need to forgive that. In forgiving him, I forgive myself, and I return to love. Okay, so it's like a little ritual that you do. Now, you don't have to end up liking the person. He's still a jerk at the human level, right? But he's in your life for a reason. And you've attracted him into your life in order for you to be able to heal that part of you that you have yet to come to terms with and to love just the way it is. And so it's an opportunity for you to love yourself when you see it out there. So you say to yourself, God, I hate that person. He's a real jerk. But I recognize that he's in my life for a reason, and so I'm going to do that forgiveness worksheet, do the numbers 10 and 11, and see if I can take it in as best I can, and see what difference it makes. And you'll be amazed at how much difference happens, or what occurs as a result of you doing just that. Number one, you feel different about it. No longer upsets you quite as bad as it did before. And secondly, the person might stop the behavior because there's no purpose left. He was only doing it subconsciously or at the spiritual level for you, acting that way. Okay? And so he may change. Or if he doesn't change, he may get promoted and get to a different department, gets out of your life altogether, and so on. You'll just notice that everything shifts around that particular thing once you've done that element. If that's not enough, let me just say there's one more worksheet that you can do on a person, and the object of this worksheet is to accept a person just the way they are. And this other person is a child of God too, and this other person is doing what they need to do and expressing themselves in the way they need to express themselves because that's how God made them. And so that's another little worksheet you can do as a spiritual exercise of total acceptance of someone the way they are, even if they're stupid, a jerk, or even cruel and nasty. See, I make the point in my first book, Radical Forgiveness. If you can't forgive Hitler, you can't forgive anybody, because there are no exceptions to the rule.
Yeah, and that's a hard one. That's why this ends up being the work, and that's why people go to these 3-day weekend workshops with you and week-long workshops and work with coaches, is because it's difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult to accept it, but once you try it, it becomes easy. That's the irony of this thing. Radical forgiveness is not difficult if you just use the tools and stop trying to make it a struggle.
Well, again, the worksheets
it's much easier than you think.
Yeah. Well, I want to let everybody know the worksheets that Colin's talking about. You can find them at his website, colintipping.com, under free stuff. Throw in your email address, and I think there's about 7 different worksheets all relating to different aspects of forgiveness and even manifestation. Again, the website's an amazing resource. Take some time to look around, find out all about his books, including the new one, 25 Practical Uses for Radical Forgiveness. See where he's leading a new workshop, hopefully near you. If not, it'd probably be worth it to get on a plane and go to where he is, because these are fabulous changes he's effecting in people. and read his books, because there's a lot of people in there who tell their stories, and it's amazing stuff that they're releasing and moving through and healing themselves. So, Colin, it's always fun talking with you. I so love the work you're doing, and the new book is great, and I so hope to talk to you again sometime.
All right. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Craig.